Hey everyone. Yeah, I think being here in Portugal and in Porto specifically is gonna help my muscle building process for hiking, because you know what it's like if you're here with us. And I'm just taking a moment here to enjoy this, because this is like a pretty awesome stage. And thanks for everyone for coming here today. I know that first presentations of a second day of WordCamp Europe can be rough. So I hope I'll give you a run for your money. So a very tiny bit about me here. I'm Vasi, and as Amit said, my main job is to work with clients to help them fast-track their digital strategy, help them make connections with clients, and help them get me out of the project as quickly as possible. So I try to give them not just hands-on work on my end, but also give them the knowledge needed to get that project running in the long run. You can see my name written a bajillion times on this slide. If you're on Twitter, hit me up. If you're on Instagram, I love a shot where you can tag me. It's the same as the Twitter handle. So I'd be happy to share more with you guys later, and let's connect. And just a quick intro here. The first version of this talk was probably like a 2.5-hour presentation. So we're a bit short on time here, and what I decided to do is give you guys some homework. You're getting, at the end of the talk, you'll see a link where you can get the slides that I've shown here, and also a very comprehensive guide with which you can create your own personas and learn more about what I'm going to talk here. So I'm not going to dive into the technical side. I'm going to mention a few tools, but that's going to be it. And you'll get more information about how you can use them in the additional materials. So first off, let's see what are we talking about here. When I say content personas, people sometimes think about, is that the same as buyer personas? Is that the same as user personas we would use in product marketing? And it's the same concept, but I'm talking about creating a persona specifically for the readers of your content. So these can be the decision makers who are gonna find you online and get to trust you and know you through your content and then decide to work with you. It can be the users who are actually going to get some content from you that's going to help them become better at using your product or using your services. It can be influencers and thought leaders who are going to see your content and recommend you to others. And having a persona is the thing that's closest to actually having a person from your target audience sit right next to you when you're creating your content. So we can't have that ideal situation every time. We can't have someone sitting down next to us and thinking about, yeah, I don't really think this is relevant enough for me, or I don't think this is important enough for me, or oh my God, that's amazing content. But you can get a representative of your target audience. So a target audience, the simplest way you can think of it is a bunch of people who have the same type of qualities that are important for your content. And the target persona is like a singular person from your target audience. And when I say a single person, I'm cheating a bit here because it's not a real person, right? It's actually more akin to a composite image. So what you see here on the screen, this is a cool project, a bit controversial, but I'm not going to get into that, where they took a bunch of photos of locals and created the common face, in this case of Lisbon. Sorry, Porto, they didn't have one of Porto. Otherwise, I would have put that up on the slide. So a persona is essentially this same thing. So it's someone who's a mental image of all the people you're trying to cater to. And when you look online, there's a bajillion of different ways to create a persona. And I think that the template is the simplest thing, because you can get a lot of different versions. I'm going to give you my preferred formats. I have two I usually use with clients, so you're going to get those in the last slides as well. But the important thing to remember here is not the template itself, is what you put into it. Because what usually happens is people are going to download the template and be like, okay, I'm going to fill this in, and that's going to be it, right? And what you need to do is whenever you're filling a pre-existing template, think about, is this actually helping me? Does this serve me on a daily basis? Is this going to actually inform my content creation decisions down the long run? Or is this just some information that I put in there just to fill in the template? So the important thing here is whatever I say down the line, always think about, is this going to serve me? If it doesn't, just disregard what I say and leave it out of your persona. If it actually helps, then put it into your persona, and templates be damned. By the way, there's a really cool article by Rand Fishkin, former Moz founder and CEO, currently working in SparkToro, which is a tool I'm going to mention a few times. And he has this amazing article called Marketing Personas Are Almost Always a Boondoggle, but they don't need to be. So look that up online. You understand this point in a lot more detail. So having that caveat out of the way, what are we going to include in our content persona? So first off, we're going to add in some demographic information. Not too much, only the relevant bits, and the information that's going to help you imagine that person. Think about who that person is, and have that mental image by your side whenever you're creating content. Second, we're going to need to add their goals and needs. And this is much more important, and I'm going to get into it in a minute. Then we're going to add their interests and the different influences that are working on them. So I'm talking about brands they love, celebrities they follow, media they read on a daily basis, etc., etc. These two bits, the goals and their interests, are going to inform a lot of the content decisions we do down the line, because they're going to help us know what we need to tell them to help them achieve their goal, and how we need to say it so that it fits with their interests and influences. And finally, we need to know their content preferences. Do they want to watch a video? Do they prefer to read the text? Do they want to see information in a helpful downloadable format, or do they want to get that all in one go and just run through it in a single time? That's going to be something that comes from your persona rather than what type of content you feel comfortable creating. So let's go through each of those in a bit more detail. First off, demographics. Frankly, that's a bit of a boring bit for me, because that's always the thing people start with, but we need to cover it at least in some detail. So we have stuff like age, gender, their location. Maybe you need to know their education level, so you know how detailed the content needs to be or how high the language needs to be there. Maybe you need some information about their job, like their job title, their seniority, their industry, their company size. If you're creating content for B2B personas, this is going to be very important for you, the so-called firmographics. So what's the type of company they work with? A few of the tools that I would generally use for that are as follows. And as I already mentioned, I'm not going to go into the technicalities here. I'm just going to give you the high-level overview of what's possible. And then you can get all of the additional hows and what's in the handout. With Google Analytics, you can get the age, gender, and location data of the people who are already coming to your site. One cool thing with Google Analytics is that you can actually use segmentation to see, for example, your most engaged readers, the people who spend more than a few minutes on your site or who see a bunch of different pages in a single session, etc., etc. So you can actually get this subsegment of people, so you don't want to look at all the visitors, just the engaged ones, and see what's the difference between the two. Are the people who are more engaged more prone to be in a specific age group or a specific location? If you're on social media, and specifically if you're working with B2C, so with end users, Facebook can be a nice place to get that data from. I'm not going to get all political, so I'm going to leave aside if being on Facebook is something you should be doing anyway, but if you feel that you have a good enough audience there, then use this information. Facebook Audience Insights will let you get the age, gender, and location information for the people who follow your Facebook page, or it can give you the same type of data for people that you specifically choose. So say you're starting a new business and you have no idea who the people having those interests are. You can filter based on a location or based on specific interests, and you can see the demographic data for that particular audience. So this is very helpful if you're just starting out. With LinkedIn website demographics, you'll get all the juicy details about the company of the person. It's a bit different to set up than other tools, in the sense that you need to add their tracking code on your website before you begin collecting information. And if you're in B2B, I suggest you do this like right after the talks that you have on your schedule here today. You get a lot of useful information, and frankly, to me, as a marketer providing services to other businesses, this is some of the most interesting information out of all the tools that I've shared so far. And finally, all the other tools I mentioned up till so far are free. SparkToro is probably one of the few paid ones that I'm going to talk about today, but I feel it's very much worth the money. I'm sadly not affiliated, so I don't get like a commission for saying this. It's just a tool I really like and use on a daily basis. And out of it, you can get all of this information for people who follow specific interests, for people who follow specific accounts on social media, or for people who visit specific websites. So it's very detailed in the information you can get out of it. But demographics are not the most important thing, because they are gonna be the very basic information you can get, and so not super helpful. So if I tell you a person's male, he was born in 1948, raised in the UK, married twice, lives in a castle, and has high disposable income, this can be any one of those two guys here. Frankly, I prefer Aussie, but if you're a fan of Prince Charles and you need to cater to that specific audience, they're gonna have the same demographics, right? So we're gonna dive a bit deeper and go into the goals and needs, which is what, for me, actually defines what your content approach is gonna be and what your audience actually is. So when we're talking about their goals and needs, I mean goals that they need to fulfill in order to feel successful in your particular niche, in the niche where your business provides a solution, but also the goals and needs that they need to fulfill through content itself. So is it, I need to learn a bit more about this particular topic? Is it, I need to find information that's interesting and that's going to be fun for me to spend 10 minutes while waiting on a queue? These can be different goals for content creation. So some of the questions we're going to ask here is like what they want to achieve. What are their goals in general? What issues do they encounter and need help with? What fears do they have? Are they afraid that they're going to fail? And can you actually give them something to make them feel more confident? What do they imagine success looks like? What do they want to learn? And all of these types of things sounds very difficult to get through tools. And that's actually why you're not going to use a lot of tools in this section to find this information. You have to talk to people, because tools will only get you so far. And the more important bit, when I'm talking about data-driven personas, you were probably thinking about all the stats and details that I already covered. But actually, a lot of this data that you need to include here is qualitative research type of information you're going to get. So to get that, you're going to use a completely different set of research tools. Three of the ones I particularly like to use on a regular basis are surveys, and here you can talk to your people regularly or continuously, which I'm going to give you a few examples of in a sec. You can do interviews, and these can be structured. I'm particularly a big fan of the jobs to be done methodology, so I do a lot of customer interviews where we try to uncover these goals and needs, or in marketing jargon, the jobs they want to get done. And these can also be unstructured discussions that your support team does or your sales team does. So whenever you're creating a persona, it's a good idea to include everyone in the room. It's not just something a marketer is going to do while sitting at their desk typing fervently all day. It's something where you need a lot of input from other people. And if you're a marketer and you don't talk to your audience, at least on a regular basis, you're not doing it right. You need to talk to people. And the third thing that comes under this qualitative research toolset is something called message mining or review mining. And I guess most of you are already familiar with surveys and interviews, but message mining is a bit different, so I'm going to give you a bit of context on that one. So what message mining is essentially you go online and you mine the information available there for interesting insights. So you'll go on different review sites or in different online communities where people gather and talk about the particular solutions that they're going to use to solve the same problem that you are solving with your business. And you're going to look for specific words and phrases that they use, explaining what they want to achieve, their goals, what they like about a particular solution, so what are the benefits that they already see in others and that you need to cover, what are some of the pains or problems that they have or the anxieties that they have before actually purchasing something new. And this is a great way of doing your quick and dirty bit of research first, and then diving deeper with interviews or surveys, because you can get through a ton of reviews online in a very short period of time. When I work with clients, usually what we end up with is an Excel spreadsheet with something like between 200 and 300 rows of different quotes pulled out of reviews or discussions online. And this is actually the information that gets embedded in my product messaging and embedded in the content that we create down the line. And it's very interesting to see how people react when they see you speak the same language that they do. It feels like, oh, I feel seen. I know that this person actually gets me because that's the same way that I'm going to formulate that if I had to. So for message mining, you can use a bunch of different sources. If you're looking for general information, this is going to be review sites like Trustpilot or reviews.io. If it's a physical product, you can go on Amazon or eBay or wherever products get sold in your country. If we're talking about software, Capterra, G2, and so on are going to help a lot with this. Or if you're talking about local business or you're in the travel industry, going after TripAdvisor, Booking.com is going to give you that information. For B2B, if you're an agency and you're trying to see what people like about working with your competition, that's going to be stuff like Clutch, Good Firms, etc. And frankly, like the most commonplace and the most difficult to follow, because they don't have only reviews there, there's a lot of different information, would be different social channels. So if there are groups online where your audience gathers, you can have, you can look at LinkedIn or Facebook communities, you can look at particular professional Slack communities, you can look on Quora, etc., etc. This is going to be the most difficult bit because it's going to require a lot of additional research. So if you can, use the first places mentioned here to get the bulk of your data, and then just use your search foo to get the information out of this last category here. And when I talk about getting this qualitative information, it's important to remember that you can get it as a one-off at the start of your project, but it's even more important to get it continuously throughout your work for the company. So a great example here, I have a link to this survey in the handout because I feel that this is the best survey that I've seen online. It's done by Intercom. They do an annual reader survey for their blog. And this is a way to get that information out as a one-off. On the other hand, this is a welcome email that I send out to the newsletter subscribers that join my email list. And the question there, which you probably can't read, is what was going on in your life that led you to subscribe to my newsletter today, and what do you expect to get from it? The amount of answers you're going to get to this is going to be low. It's going to be a couple of %. But the information you get out of it is pure gold. And the cool thing is that you need to set this up once, and then you continue to get information and get information and get information to no end, which is amazing. So the third category, interests and influences. What we want to ask here is, what are the topics that our audience is interested in? Or what are the different brands that they value? What are the experts that they trust? So these can be thought leaders in your industry, or even like celebrities or whatever. The media they consume, some of the popular faces out there that they love, or the causes that they care for. Why you need this information, though, is going to be a question you're probably asking at this point, and I'm going to tell you about that in a sec. But first, let's see where we can get this data from. So from Google Analytics, what you can see is if you start collecting information about your audience, the demographic information that we saw in the first section, you're also going to get some interest categories for those people. Frankly, this is not my favorite tool because the interest categories are very broad, so you're not going to get a lot of specific information out of it, but it still works if you're just starting out. And you can find out the media they consume through your referral section in Google Analytics, so you can see who's coming to your website through different channels. In SparkToro, that I already mentioned a few times, you can get a lot of data from this category. You'll be able to see what are the different social media accounts people follow, the podcasts they follow, the websites that they visit, and so on and so forth. And the cool thing here is that SparkToro gives you not just the most popular ones, but also what they call hidden gems. So these are the accounts that are not as popular, but currently growing like hell for your target audience. And of course, getting those surveys and interviews out there, this is going to be a particularly interesting category to follow because you can get all the information that you want out of the survey. I mean, like, you designed it, so what's better, you know? And how we're going to use that information is to spice up your content. So this is an example of something that I know my audience is interested in. Most marketers are media buffs, and they watch great movies all the time. So you can connect your particular category of topics with an interest of your audience and make that content more interesting. So what I did back a few weeks was created like a newsletter piece which was about what The Big Short, the movie The Big Short, can teach you about qualitative research. And it's a lot. So if you're interested to know more about this, just ping me after this session and I'll tell you more. And the other thing you can do is form alliances with different media that you know your audience frequents. So these are a few collaborations that I've done with Content Marketing Institute, with Growth Mentor, where we created content together, and I was able to reach all of their audience because I know that these are places that my audience likes, that my audience enjoys seeing. And finally, the last category that I mentioned, content preferences. So what do we want to have here? What are the formats that those people like? Do they prefer audio or video? Do they want to read text, etc.? What are the platforms that they visit? So do you need to be big on LinkedIn or on Twitter or on Instagram? I don't know. Your audience is going to tell you. What are the sources that they trust? What are the media that they follow? What are the questions that they have that you can answer in a really cool way? And what are the types of content that they enjoy? Is it listicles? Is it in-depth pieces? Is it something completely different? So again, you'll be able to glean some of that information through Google Analytics by looking at your top performing content. And this can be anything from the pieces that get the most attention to the pieces that get the highest engagement. And you can also get a bit of that information through SparkToro by analyzing what are the top websites that your people follow, going through these sites and seeing, okay, like these guys are relying on that particular type of content. This is maybe something that I'm going to include in my content strategy. And again, the best thing, just ask them. What I really like doing as well is to ask questions in a contextual manner. So having like a small pop-up question on a new piece, just getting a quick run of people, whether they like this piece of content or not. This is going to give you a lot of information to see what's your top performing content according to your users. So to wrap this up, how do we put this all together? I mentioned already there's a bunch of different ways. You can use whatever it works. Whatever works for your company, then that's a good way of presenting your persona. This is an example from MailChimp. They had these posters for their personas created and put them in their office. Obviously, we're in this new post-COVID world, so maybe your office is not the best place where to put that information, but it can still work. There's a famous story that Amazon, whenever a meeting's happening, there's always an empty chair left to represent the customer. Whatever works for you, use it. I prefer to have something that's simple and that's easy to digest and to read. So that's the format that I use. And, and there's a few different ways in which you can structure that, which brings me to my last point. You're going to get these templates that I prefer to use and the detailed walkthrough at this link at the top. And if you enjoyed this, I'd love to see you as part of my newsletter community. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vasi. That was a very interesting talk. We've got a microphone here. Would anyone like to start us off with any questions? We'll give them a moment, and I might start, Vasi.
Sure.
So, is there a common mistake that you see companies make when they create personas?
I think the most important thing that I mentioned at the start is people are just going to use like a template they find online and that they're just going to grab and go with without thinking if the information in it is going to serve them. So for example, like, do you include information about the pets your audience owns? If you're in B2B, probably not. If you're selling cat food, then that's an important bet.
Great. And a follow-up, is this process applicable only to content marketing? But how would you change it to create a buyer or user persona?
So the approach is going to be pretty similar to what we saw here. So you're still going to use a lot of that same information. You're probably not going to use content preferences, but maybe information about like what are the different features people would use for user personas, or for example, the way people make decisions, if you're talking about a buyer persona. But all of the tools and research methods I mentioned are still going to be applicable.
And thirdly, if people have already covered this process, what will be the next step for the advanced version?
So a persona is going to give you like a static image of your audience, and what the next step is, or rather like what you can combine it with, is a customer journey map. So this is going to show the evolution of the person going through each stage, from awareness all the way to purchase and post-purchase, or to subscription and post-subscription if we're talking about content, let's say, and you have a newsletter. And this is going to be a nice combination where you're going to still have like who the person is in the persona and what they go through in the journey map.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, Vassi. My name is Thijs, and it's really worth going out to bed this early. Thank you for your talk. I was wondering, every company has its ideal client. But can you say something about the amount of personas per company? Do you advise simply 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. Usually you would have probably, let's say 2 to 3. If you go above 5, then you're doing something wrong. Like you need to figure out what's the most important characteristic in which you can combine them. And it's very difficult to try to engage with everyone if you have more than 3 or 4 personas. So that's why I try to limit this. Usually what happens is people are going to start with the demographic information, and they're going to think that there are, let's say, 8 different personas. But when you look at the goals and needs, it actually turns out that demographics don't really matter, but the goals are the same for a few of these, and you're going to get this down to, let's say, 3 or 4 or something like that. So I think the goals bit is the important way to combine different personas that you need to follow.
Thank you.
Thank you.